we are ready to round up our very fruitful conference with the panel discussion. And at this point, me, Sandra Calvin, representing Federation of European Literacy Associations and Latin Reading Association.
And I'm Maria Jurina from Estonian Reading Association.
We would like to invite our panelists to take the seat, please. Well, I think I have my teacher's voice. Do you hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I also use my teacher's voice? Then we don't need mics.
Yes.
And we will discuss about very interesting topics like reading the words or reading the world. And firstly, we invite all panelists to introduce themselves because I think you'd like to know more about them. So let's start from this end.
My name is Zoe Tragahulpakis. I am Associate Professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm here representing the board of the International Literacy Association and supporting the mission of ILA across the world. Thanks for having me.
Hello, my name is Ellen Roper. I'm representing the Estonian Debate Association, of which I am both a kind of teacher but also a debater myself. And I'm also an undergraduate student at the University of Oxford.
Hello everybody, my name is Elsa Hensala. I'm a researcher and actually I feel myself a little bit strange because I'm a physicist. But I'm also a writer and so I hope that I can give to some things a little differently perhaps.
So hi, I'm really glad to be here and I'm Eva Margevici-Greenberg, a professor from University of Latvia. Yes, and I strongly believe in literacy and this is why I'm here.
Hello, I'm Tiit Maran. Actually, I don't know whom I'm representing, probably myself, but I'm a visiting professor in the University of Life History in Estonia and at the same time member of parliament. And I've been always interested in the relations between human being and the environment and actually also education, which are all quite tied up between each other. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. As we can see, we have representatives from all walks of life. The one uniting element is they are all educators. And I think being an educator, that is a great mission because we touch the future. And it is also in our hands to make literacy environments into environmental literacy.
So, when talking about reading the words and reading the words, then what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe let's start for the youngest.
Sure. Well, I have a few thoughts regarding this, but I think one of the most important things to start with is that young people really want to have the words to call out nonsense. And kind of where politicians and other public figures are actually not giving a point, but are just kind of messing with them. So something this manifests in is that we often do kind of demagoguery training, just to have students have the vocabulary to point out what is wrong with this argument, why do I not believe this? And also actually knowing, what a politician can promise to me is something that we are also pushing for in the Estonian Debating Society with projects like Tark Valija, where actually, knowing what are you looking for, what words can these politicians convince you with? Can you actually promise to lower taxes in the local elections? No, probably not, right? So I think giving the tools to actually notice and speak of what's going wrong is really important here.
So you mean not just literacy, but like more wider concept, understanding the words, and promises and everything.
Yeah, in your statement, you mentioned politics and politicians. Maybe what's your answer to that?
I have to say I'm in a parliament, but I don't feel like a politician myself, so I'm probably just somebody trying to do something different like most politicians are doing. But anyway, don't blame politicians, you are voted for them and you have chosen them, so blame yourself if you are not happy with these people. But word to the world, I think it's embracing quite huge, actually, amount of things. We could make several issues about this, which we don't have time. But which came to my mind is actually that the word is something which is a script. The world around us is remarkably complicated. So the thing is how much we can actually trust the words, because we have a lot of words and different kind of words, and with the time, the complexity around is becoming more and more complicated. So it's not only reading a word, but also developing ability to adopting words. So you could be critical what you are reading. I think it's really important. And if you want to move from word to the world, I think this kind of transition means also that you have to be able to unlearn some of the things which you have just got by reading the words. And I would just like to emphasize Doris Lessing, and also which has one time written, I think it was a Golden Diary. Interesting thing is that everybody who we are teaching the people, we have to keep in mind that we are programming people. And if you are programming people, you have to make sure that you are not making the people just robots, programmed entities, but you have to make sure that you are actually educating the people which are able to make their own decisions, able to doubt what you are doing, so they are actually developing a kind of ability to self-educate themselves, to make its own decision, what is right, what is wrong, what are the relations between different kind of things. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have nowadays, because it's a mess out there.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
And sorry, we have to take mics because it will be recorded, and otherwise our teacher voice won't be recorded. And this is something quite deep, like learning to unlearn and learning to read and not to maybe believe what's written. So who would like to continue from this statement?
Maybe I can continue, because I think in the time of overwhelming choices, it is when it comes to selecting facts, it's really like we know, information overload and overload of words, and what we have to develop. Skills about how to make informed decisions, choices, overload, information overload, and choices, and decisions, informed decisions. So this is the first.
Yeah, thank you very much. I saw Zoe is eager to look at me, so you also want to say
I just want to make a comment earlier. The question was reading the word, right? To read the world. Whose word? Whose word? And how do you read that word? And how do you know what the word matters to you? We are in a very challenging period of time that the words, in general, they are generated from many different sources. But evaluating what is the word to read is the challenge. And also, who says that word? What is the bias that may come behind that word? And then making the world, whose world? Is this a world of assimilation? Is this a world of transformation? Is this the world that the students who are now our students and tomorrow will be the citizens of these countries, of our world, of what we call world now? Is this their world? Do we create the environments for them to have a chance of happiness and justice within the world? So it's a question that has so many layers. It's layers of identity even within. It is not just the word. It's far beyond that. And then to my colleague about the comment made about learning to unlearn and being able to unlearn, that's extreme vulnerability, because that requires the ability to self-reflect, to doubt yourself, and to want to learn something, knowing that I'm not an expert in everything. I am willing to learn. So maybe because I'm Greek, I will say this, but that Socratic approach of I know nothing and I'm willing to learn everything, perhaps is the way that we can be functioning in that way of I'm willing to learn more. And then interpret many words. So,
Yeah, thank you very much. And we still have our panelists to express the view.
Yeah, so I'm trying a little bit not to repeat so many thoughts were already said. I was thinking about this topic. So yeah, one thing that perhaps I would like to bring out, because I study complex systems, so you have a system that consists of many elements that act as a sum differently from the units. And so if you talk about the words, perhaps it's important to keep in mind that, words, singular words have their meaning, but if you put them together, you form the sentences. From sentences you form a text, a story, and actually this story has a bigger meaning than the single words, and this is very important. What is the story? And the same thing is with environment, because small elements in the environment, you can look for a small system, but then if you sum up different parts of the bigger environment, then the whole environment works in a different way than you think. So it's important to understand what is the bigger story, and I think one element that I would also like to bring out is that if I'm a reader, if I'm the one who observes something, then I may understand it in one way, but somebody else can understand it in a different way. Perhaps we both have right, perhaps we both are wrong, it depends. But so we are actually not that we are only us, it's more.
So it needs a dialogue, and I also already saw some people made some notes. So if any one of you would like to ask or comment something from your other panelists, then you can show and do it, please.
Yeah, so I think there were many interesting things. I'd love to comment on all of them. But I think one of the important things here was, needing to unlearn, and also maybe needing to be aware of what effect stories are having on you. Maybe different people have different cognitive biases or different backgrounds, which means that you interpret what you see differently. And this needs to be an active process to be able to actually deal with this. I think the critical thing here maybe is that if we want critical thinking, then we need to reward critical thinking. And I think in education, this sometimes it's done very well, and sometimes it doesn't really happen. Critical thinking kind of gets into the big mix of, memorize, look confident, all of that. And I think here it's quite important to be cognizant of, am I actually rewarding the student for taking apart the premises, for actually being, is this, is there any internal inconsistency in this case, or is there actually a real point being made? I think debate, obviously, as a debater, is a great tool for this, because whether you win or lose, depends on whether you can dissect what the other side is saying. But I think this can also be done in, argumentative writing. But this needs to be directly rewarded and, pointed out to students. So I think maybe thinking about how you can make these reward systems such that it's actually really natural and motivating, for these students to master these skills is something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. I think you also want to add something.
Yeah, too many things, but I'm trying to find only a few. First, the word, it seems to be very abstract. I think it's, just a couple of figures and that's it. But in reality, if we are talking about words, we have to keep in mind that the word is always connected to the surrounding. And if I'm saying surrounding, I'm keeping in mind the psychology, social systems, even the large narratives which are leading us to understand the world. And just an easy example is that if we are saying some words like a tax, if we say the burden, tax burden, it all of a sudden it opens in our minds a cognitive frame which is emotionally loaded and it has a negative meaning. At the same time, we connect to that's an investment to the future, it will open at once completely different kind of framework, cognitive framework, which has a positive thing. So the one word depends in which kind of context we are actually using it. And even more, the words are related to the meaning sphere around us, what kind of things have meaning around us. And the problem is that if we are going to try to explain something for the people which are left outside of the value of meanings outside, then it will be incredibly complicated. And I mean here, actually, if we talk about environmental literacy, because everything around us is actually modified, technical, and our value systems and our understandings and even our identity is very much related to, nowadays, to the modified landscapes and technical structures around us. And if you are living in this kind of environment, to try to make people to understand what is behind all that, I mean the ecological systems, biosphere, is incredibly complicated. Because the words and the meanings are very much connected to what is around that. And that's one of the key issues if we actually want to survive, is how to bring a value of the environmental systems into our technical modified environment. It was very easy in traditional culture once people were living in ecological systems, but nowadays, come on, it's incredibly complicated. That's definitely one thing which has to be really considered in a way how we are teaching our children. What we are talking in universities, and actually what we're doing also in politics, which I see every day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You raised a number of important questions, especially related to technologies, but still a comment coming from Zoe.
So we discussed about the words. I appreciate the comment earlier by my colleague. It's not a word, it's combination of words, and then it's combination of words in sentences, and sentences in paragraphs, and paragraphs in essays, and essays in a message. So I'm thinking of the word then, how do we view the function of the individual with the word? Is it the word as a consumer, and I use it, or am I using the word and combination of words in order to be a creator? And if you're a creator, then you are into the position of taking action. So I'm thinking of that within the terms of environmental literacy too. Is it to just understand the environments and the settings and where we are and what does this mean and how do we work within them and how we work within a system and how it's our ecology, right, and biodiversity, and we understand our system, or it's also connected with taking an action. And then that action can come through writing. And in order to take an action through writing, you need to utilize critical thinking. You need to evaluate information, synthesize information, have a message for for the consumers of your own work as a creator, but also knowing that you have that responsibility of that action, of that work that you create, because that will influence those who will consume your words. So it's a dynamic, in other words, this play of word between the writer, the reader, and the social context where we all function.
Yeah, and then we come to that eternal question. What matters more, the words or the picture? Yeah, and picture in our case, in a broader sense, the environment.
And because it's also the communication was mentioned, then I'm seeing very curious faces, but maybe someone would like to ask something from audience, then you are always welcome to do it. Raise your hand and you can join the discussion.
Our audience is still thinking. And one thing that came to my mind while listening to your statements was, okay, environmental literacy, technologies, and artificial intellect, and action. Then what to do in this situation?
Yeah, I don't say anything right now about artificial intelligence, but just to continue the discussion. So what I, as a physicist, would perhaps also bring on the table is that we already got that we have the words, we have the pictures, so the environment we see, we can represent as a picture. But as you all know, then physicists, because physics actually means the nature, describing the nature, so what physicists do, and actually it's also, I think it's very important that we don't lose, and especially in Estonia now there is this discussion about the mathematics, people don't want to study anymore mathematics, but also mathematics is a language, and with an equation you can say many things. And with a system of equations, you can describe a huge system, and not only the situation, but how it was in the past, how it will be in the future, and so actually this is one aspect perhaps I would like to make you think about. And if you talk about literature in the, let's say, classical sense, then if you think about it, it's so strange how many writers have in their books have told things that will then, after a long time, sometimes happen in the future. I find it really amazing and kind of even perhaps scary, because how did they know that it will happen? So, there are these funny connections between the scientists, mathematicians, physicists predicting the future, but also the writers predicting the future.
Yeah, human mind is unpredictable.
So it was reading the word, not only via words, but formulas and all those. Would anyone like to add something? Or
I would like to add a comment to the previous comment that you made about something that I noticed that as a professor. I serve in different committees, and one of them is the pedagogy and AI. And it was interesting that our students start having an interest on the effects of artificial intelligence on the environment. That was a surprise that this is something that occurs in the classes, that they are concerned. And that gave me hope that the new generation tends to care. So I appreciated your comments about debate and arguing. That's the basis of critical thinking. You argue because you have an opinion, and not because you try to impose it on others, but because you try to say that something may not be one way. So I appreciate that coming from the new generation. And if that's the future that they're bringing, I'm very happy that they are questioning the world and they are questioning the words.
Yeah, our younger colleague.
Yes, thank you. I really had a quick comment on what Elle said about mathematical literacy, because I think this is really important in terms of environmental concerns especially. So maybe what what we do in debate might be a bit further from this, but I think having a base understanding of statistics is so critical, because so often it's just the case that you either, it's been proven, there's a number there, we can move on. Or it's like, oh, well, there's no point in me engaging with this anyway because I won't be able to understand. They're probably trying to, get the better of me, trying to trick me or something like that. So I think critical thinking on the level of, argumentation and understanding what is trying to be done with the words and choice of words, but also actually being able to look at the diagram and see, aha, well, this doesn't really make a lot of sense because this data doesn't represent what they're trying to talk about, is a very natural partner, and I don't think, one without the other will achieve its full effect.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other comments or a new statement?
Or maybe any questions from
I
audience?
think T has.
Yeah, I could actually elaborate a little bit. See, it was interesting kind of dual words, word and picture. And the word what we have here in Western culture is very different what we have in the East, which actually is shaping also different kind of psychology. Because in hieroglyphs, which have a basis actually in a picture, you could have a lot of different kind of meanings. And that could mean also that the thinking, the understanding of the world is remarkably different. But one thing which came into the mind, that let's take the word the forest. It's just a word, and then we probably have kind of imagination what could be behind of that. And then we have a picture of forest, which is much, much richer. There are a lot of elements which you could look at that. And then imagine that you will be in a forest. Smells, air, sounds, everything. So you think it's interesting that the word what we have is actually pretty poor in reflecting the reality what we have, and it's becoming a little bit apart. I remember a philosopher, David Abrams, which have elaborated the topic of being abstract in words, and it's creating, interestingly, like a parallel world in which we are living, because it could be abstract, especially because we have words which are written past in the history when we had a oral teaching was changing all the time in accordance to the conditions which we had around. But now we start to have something which is just abstract and which might have relatively little connection to the reality. So it's interesting thing. The word is important, no doubt on that, but it has also some limitations that we have to keep in mind because it's not reality. It's something different.
Maybe I can elaborate on that. We had research about our students and problems because our textbooks in schools, they have less and less text, more and more pictures, and then they come to our university and they have to read scientific texts. They are lost, they are angry, they feel different emotions because they are out of comfort zone, because textbooks were with bigger letters with nice pictures, and now scientific articles, and so then we understood that if we can't ask critical thinking to think critically, we have to start with guided reading. Yes, we use different strategies, and it's really changed that we have to think about complex text reading. We have to teach them at university level, because at school level they have no texts. They don't have to read in Latvia whole books. They have to read or to listen. It's okay. It's sometimes for inclusive education, it's okay. They have to listen to stories. They have to read fragments, because to read compulsory book, it's like negatively seen. So this is another, it's a result, and it is, for us as scientists and researchers, it's something bad news, because what we see, what happens with their mind, with their ability to write, how they write, it's chaotic. Yeah, this is another thing what comes from pictures and science. Yeah, that's my.
Yeah, thank you very much for being so critical about it. Any comment on this?
I think that my comment is about literacy as it's evolved in that case. At some point, I remember there was the digital literacies debate of what does it do to cognition and whether we are utilizing different comprehension strategies in the process. And I remember it was Wolf and Brasilia who were saying that it's the only thing that we need, not the only thing, among other things that we need to worry about is evaluation. The ability to evaluate information and evaluate the information the students read and what is valid and what is not, especially in digital environments that they may not have the credibility of the text or the print. Now, and I constantly think of artificial intelligence and what does that mean for our students? What does it mean for the construction of ideas? What does it mean for the world that they will be processing? And I think it's again the same part. It's again the evaluation. And what does it mean to be critical? It's about being able to critically analyze the question you are asked to answer. Think of how to prompt and re-prompt in order to get an answer. Evaluate the answer that is given against the criteria of the initial assignment for then to re-prompt. And finally, you have an output that you will evaluate that it's a valid output and doesn't have made-up sources, for instance, because that's very common. So all this to say that we need to start thinking of critical thinking as critically comprehending, critically synthesizing, critically analyzing. And my colleague spoke about mathematics. I think there is great logic in numbers, but logic itself is critical. So if we embrace criticality, questioning, analyzing, supporting students to have analytical skills, not to accept an answer. I say this as educators. Often in classrooms we will see teacher initiation, student response, teacher confirmation. This model of questioning, we know it's not effective, yet we do it because it saves time, right? How many times we have embraced student criticality? So, and again, within systems that may be more challenging because we have time, we have curricula, we have expectations, we have standards. So there are a lot of concepts to negotiate, in other words. But if we really want to have a world of thinkers, then this process of critically thinking, evaluating, analyzing, I think it's the essence of what we should be doing within a world. Because I don't know what the world will be. I really don't know.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Then where to start? How are we going to embrace this environmental literacy? Which might be the first steps for us to take?
Well, that is something which I've been advocating all the time, without any good results, at least in Estonia. You know, we are living in a very strange society. We have people who are decision makers and they do not have a clue about what they are making decisions. Especially if you talk about environmental and the environmental crisis issues, let's say climate change or loss of biodiversity, of the plastic contamination, which is just incredible levels right now. But the thing is that most of the people which are in politics, what kind of backgrounds they have? Lawyers, economic people, people which are trained to do public jobs. But they have very few understanding about ecology. They don't know anything about ecology. And because the mindset, what we have nowadays in the society, is so much concentrated to what is just surrounding us in the social systems, the likelihood that this kind of situation, the people which are governing us, the politicians, could make decisions which are meaningful. Okay, I will leave aside that the politics is not run on a science, but it's mostly run on interest. That's a different story. But the likelihood to make right decisions is actually very slim. So how to get over that? My personal conviction is that definitely we have to teach children, but that takes a lot of time. The second thing is, if it would be, I could have a magic wand and I could make a change, I would put in every single university curriculum a teaching about Earth, ecological Earth. So that these people which are coming to make decisions could have the understanding how this Earth, the biosphere, is actually functioning. That it's not a place you could all the time take something outside for the sake of growth, and we don't know even why we have to grow so much. Without this kind of knowledge, we have basically no hope that we could reach to the level that the decisions which are done in the level of on politics could be meaningful.
Maybe I can add that in Latvia it's compulsory to have in all study programs environmental one course. It's not big, I think 2 credit points or 1 credit point, and it's compulsory. All the programs include civil defense, environmental course.
Then you're much better off than me.
Yeah. And the other panelists?
Yes, I was quite touched by this because I used to be very fond of biology and now I'm a student of economics. I think the point here that really makes me kind of sad is that these are seen as 2 completely different spheres. So one is a sphere of, how do we make economic plans, how do we run our country's tax systems, etc. And then there's a separate sphere of, maybe there's some birds and bugs and whatever. But obviously, these things are much more interconnected than some people would like to acknowledge. I do think vested interests here have a large role to play in kind of recreation of previous separations, because you get taught in a particular institute and you learn from particular people who maybe didn't know ecology themselves, etc. And I do think that the perfect thing would be what apparently is the case in Latvia, that everybody is forced to really engage with this, and maybe even more than that, those 2 credit points, maybe it props up in your actual day-to-day coursework. But I think another cool way, and I'm segueing to debate again, is that just to create spaces of kind of true connection between disciplines. So to have these conversations which maybe aren't being had within kind of more insular academic contexts, which needn't be so insular, I think just having students in schools and universities debate these kinds of motions can be very interesting. For example, just a few motions that I've encountered in my debating career, should we implement a carbon tax, or should we have a cap and trade system? Should we support eco-terrorism in certain cases? Should we welcome climate refugees? To what extent? Should we pause ecological regulations in times of economic crisis? And I think just having the space to really talk about these trade-offs and see the connections between these systems is a part of that remedy. That means that also those people who really want to become prime ministers one day will encounter these problems and be forced to think about them.
Thank you. And we were thinking, would it be very slow discussion, or would it be going very wide? And right now it has gone wide, but very interesting. But as you said, forming from words sentence and then taking it all together, or seeing the world as a whole. So how can we each of one has 1 minute to take it all together, to wrap it up, like how can we go on with this, like words and word? What would be your like first step of action?
I don't know. I like to comment earlier that where do we start, right? What is it? Where do we go from here? I think that in order to, I will make this comment, and please do not be mad at me. You made a comment about politicians and opinions. I think the same about people and opinions. Everyone has an opinion, but unless you can support it with evidence, you're just a person with an opinion, and who cares about your opinion? Right? That's the belief, and I teach this to students from as young as kindergarten. But where do we go? I think that for me at least the most important part is to care and to see where are you within this system, who are you in this system. And I keep on thinking the giving tree, if you know that book. The giving tree is about the tree that a human goes and asks for things, to build things, to do things, to sell things, until there is nothing left. There is just a stump. There is nothing left. So who are we within the system? Are we consumers alone? Are we supporters of the larger system and we want to retain it? Or do we want to just consume and use? So what is our role? Who are we? And then also who are the people we want to be the next generation of people? And again, that will come from care, but also from critical thinking, criticality overall.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zoe.
I can't follow that beautifully, but I have a few concrete things, two of which I've mentioned and one of which is new. So I think the first thing I already said is, if we want critical thinking, we need to reward critical thinking. And there are different structures in which to do this, and debate is a great one. I think the second thing is that we need to give students and give ourselves the labels with which to cut through the nonsense. So recognize demagoguery, recognize where there's contradiction, etc. And then the third thing, which I didn't get the time to say before, but I do think is important, is maybe just letting students learn from each other. In this classroom context, when ideas crop up, etc., there's a very natural process of learning and copying each other, not just, this is how we have to think. And I think it's there's an internal contradiction there. You can't say, you have to be a critical thinker and this is how it's done, from the top down. It has to be a collaborative process and learning from each other. That's the way it should be.
Thank you, Ellen.
So to start from the very beginning, so you don't do critical thinking if you ask the questions, right? If you don't question, obviously you are not critically thinking. So who are the ones asking the most questions? Everybody knows very well, children, small children. My God, they are continuously asking questions. So let's not kill this. And another thing that I see that is also very important if you talk about the literature and the environment, is that for many years I thought I'm a very strange person because I don't remember important things, reasonable things, I forget them as if they were unimportant, but I remember some very strange things and details. And then I realized, and then I learned later that I remember the strange things because they created me some emotion. So if something that we learn, we hear, causes to us some strong emotion, we remember it much better than any other thing. So also, when we communicate the facts about the environment to people, it's important to create emotion. So this is very important, and it's very closely connected to the stories telling. And who knows, the books I write, and they are full of, they are children books, they are full of questions, and they try to make the emotion. And so I actually don't agree that with children it takes too long, because I'm a mother for 2 children, and I just today morning I saw a picture of 8 years ago when they were small like this, and today they are taller than me. So it actually goes very fast, and I suggest to invest in children.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for this.
Yeah, yes, so for me, the most important thing is to be open, to be with open eyes, with open mind, and if we can't change the global systems, we can start with ourselves. We can be curious, we can create spaces around us for discussions like we do it today, to meet, to share feelings, to share emotions, to be present, because the worst thing is to be somewhere in the phone, somewhere, but no, to be present, to be open.
Yeah, thank you very much. And indeed, your finalizing words.
Yeah. That's a question that was a really good one, because I've always been thinking that the questions are way more important than answers. And I think what we have to encourage the people to ask to themselves questions and then try to reply, and if the common narrative which is around us is actually not providing you a sufficient questions, then you have to ask more questions, and you just have to have a quest to reach to the answer or a reply which is acceptable for you, because you have kind of club different kind of ideas, and if these ideas which you have do not fit to the questions, then you have to look a different way, and in this way you could become more independent in your ability to judge what is around, and maybe also to see that the narrative which is leading us might not be the best one, and that have to be changed. Maybe this kind of idea. I had something else in my mind, but I forgot.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we heard quite a number of very interesting statements, opinions, also provided some evidence on this topic. Definitely there is much food for thinking for all of us, really to make the world transfer from word to world, and environmental literacy, like being one of the most important, if we can say so, in this time of changes, transformations. And I would agree with the panelists, we have to start with ourselves.
And as you said, being open, being caring, asking the questions, and not just being consumers, but creators of the words and also the world around us. So thank you, everyone, very much.
Thank you.